Today's podcast is brought to you by StrongHeartAcademy.com, where no heart is no victory. We are also brought to you by BJJ To Go. If you want to build your game and learn jiu-jitsu, go to bjjtogo.com. Third thing we're brought to you by is Rat Bat. Got rats? Want to kill bats? Kill them with a rat bat. Fourth thing we're brought to you by is hot dog flavored water ingredients. If you want to add it to your smoothie, hot dog flavor ingredient. Just tell me your name.
Tim McCulloch.
Tim McCulloch. And I know you because you train with me. How long have you trained?
Jeez, I've been training with you 7 years now.
7 years, yeah, a long time. I always people are like, yeah, man, I've been here for like 5 years. I'm like, no, has it been like 3 years? The time, I get so confused now because there's so many people for so long, and then even myself, I'm like, wait, I've trained for 21 years? That doesn't seem right. Like, it's so long. I've trained longer than some of my students have been alive,
right?
Which is insane.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I get confused. But I wanted to interview you because you're a really interesting person for three main kind of things.
Right.
Today, I wanted to talk more about law because you're a lawyer.
Okay.
But you're from South Africa, which is also crazy. Not crazy, but like it's very interesting.
Right.
It's an interesting place. And then you are a pilot.
Yeah.
So those are like three separate things that I could do 3 podcasts with.
Right.
So like if you ever want to come back, we'll probably talk about one of those other things.
Okay.
And because again, I think we've talked many times. We've had lunch. I just think you have a really you've had an interesting life so far. And so those are interesting things. Today I just want to talk about kind of law and I think, one thing that kind of bums me out is even myself, how much I don't understand the law and how much most Americans don't understand the law and how everything is based on the law.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy. Finance is that way too, where how many people don't understand money. Everything is run by money.
Right.
Yet we're so uneducated, unless you go to college and you take specific courses on both these subjects.
Right.
You're kind of like dumb. We're all dumb. We're just kind of like, you go on in the news and you hear somebody spout off, but usually that's an editorial opinion thing.
Right.
And that guy doesn't even know the law either. Like, it's just his opinion on a subject like Rittenhouse, whatever the new news thing is. But those generally aren't lawyers. Sometimes they'll bring a lawyer on. But so many times it's just the guy's opinion, but that's not law.
And it's usually,
or they don't know the law. I guess you can have opinions on the law even if you're.
And it's so sound. That the sound bites
is
so short that it's almost impossible to explain a lot of stuff in the law to somebody.
Yeah.
In that kind of situation.
What do you think is like one of the most misconceptions about the law that people come up with and you're like, that's not how it works?
With clients, it's interesting. The thing that I often have to tell them is that a lot of people want to go to trial and they want to go, they want to hear they want to get justice served. Mm-hmm. And I often have to tell them, well, the way that the current system is, if you actually end up in front of a jury, generally speaking, you're going in front of the 12 people who were unable or not smart enough to get themselves out of jury duty. So you take something that you care about a great deal.
That's scary.
And you spend 3 or 4 years litigating it, doing a bunch of discovery, figuring out what it is, taking a bunch of people's testimony, and then I get 4 or 5 days to put it in front of a jury of 12 people. I couldn't understand the case barely in 5 days. I'm going to put it in front of 5 jury lay people, and they're going to make a decision that's going to decide your fate on this case in 5 days in a jury trial, where they're limited in the information they actually get. So you have 12 people basically too stupid to get out of jury duty, who are going to make a decision about your life and your situation, and they're going to render a decision, and you're going to have to live with that.
Yeah.
And is that the best system? I don't know. After you get done with a jury trial, you'll sit down and you'll talk to a jury. Why'd you make this decision? Why'd you decide this? Why'd you think of this? And you'd be amazed at how they come to their decision. They didn't like the lawyer's tie. They didn't like the way somebody testified.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
It's a lot about like, did they like you?
Correct.
Not if it's true or
what else?
Justice.
What else are you going to do if you sit on a jury?
Yeah.
And you get introduced to a case and the lawyer doesn't do a particularly good job of presenting it, or it's hugely complex and you don't understand it. How are you going to decide it? Well, that guy seems nice. I'm going to let him win. That guy seems kind of to be a jerk. I'm going to let him lose. And that's kind of what happens.
Yeah. That's kind of scary, actually.
Correct.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. And generally your clients are people that have, they're wealthy people. They have companies probably. They are part of partnerships. So
it ranges.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've taken cases where I've represented undocumented guys and taken that to trial.
Yeah.
Because I try to do some community service.
Yeah.
And pro bono stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've done large scale corporations. I've done individuals. I've done all kinds of people that I've taken to trial. It just sort of it depends on the case.
Yeah.
Usually, unfortunately, because I'm a big firm lawyer, I'm really expensive.
Yeah.
So I cost a lot of money. But like a case I'm doing right now, which is really interesting, is I'm actually doing social equity. They're doing social equity marijuana licenses.
I don't know what that means.
So what that means is, okay, so the voters in Arizona legalized marijuana.
Yep.
And as part of that,
recreationally.
Recreational. We call it adult. Recreational is kind of an old term. It's not called adult use.
Adult use.
Adult
okay.
use. And
so what is that? Is that 18 or 21?
It's 21.
21. Okay.
So it's 21 or over. But prior it was medical. So the idea was you needed it to treat certain conditions.
Mm-hmm.
You had medical conditions that were required to be treated through medical marijuana use. And I've seen just an overall ton of medical stuff that people have been cured or really helped with medical marijuana. I mean, it's great for killing pain and doesn't have the side effects of opioids and stuff.
A lot of people say cancer for because sometimes chemo makes you appetite. You can't eat, but you need the energy, so you have to eat, and then it helps with appetite.
Correct. Yeah.
Like
my mom just went through chemo, and I saw her lose a whole bunch of weight.
Yeah.
She didn't like to eat anything.
Yeah.
And she's old school, so she just wasn't interested in exploring using marijuana that way. But then all of a sudden, we go ahead and we do adult use. So now actually we're saying, hey, you can use this like alcohol, or you can use this recreationally. You can get high for fun.
Yeah.
But in the background,
which doesn't change any of the laws of you can't drive, you can't, just like alcohol is the same thing.
But you think about it overall, how many people have we put in jail over the years for marijuana use? Just a ton. And certain communities were hit much harder than others. So the African American black community was massacred.
Yeah.
And so as a result of marijuana prohibition.
Yep.
So they went ahead and so marijuana is legalized, and all of a sudden you have these large conglomerates that are making just billions of dollars in the marijuana business. Mm-hmm. And so the idea with the social equity licenses is, don't we want to actually use some of that money to give back to the communities that suffered from prohibition and share the wealth. Share the wealth with these folks. And so I represent an outfit called Black Seed, and it's a black-owned business, majority black-owned business that is trying to get into. They think that the social equity licenses should be aimed at communities, so that communities even today you look at the way it's primarily white-driven business. Mostly white folks that run in the business, that work in the cultivation, that own the businesses, that make all the money off of this. And shouldn't the black communities that suffered from prohibition actually...
that used to sell it, but then they went to jail for it.
Yeah. And
now they're like, well, now you can't sell it either because you need the license.
Correct.
And
these guys were going to jail for selling a dime bag on the streets.
And it's pretty expensive to get a license, right? Or is it
actually
a process?
The process is tough. It's like $5,000. It used to be $25,000.
Yeah.
It's now $5,000 to get a license.
Yeah.
But even more than that, the business itself is very sophisticated, very capital intensive.
Yeah.
It's not like you have a closet where you grow some plants, some shitty plants, and try to do that. If you go into a modern marijuana cultivation facility,
it's big.
It's huge. It is clinical. It's clean. They don't grow in soil.
Yeah.
It's all hydroponic.
Yeah,
It's
indoors.
very, 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 very technical, very plant science.
Plus, the cost of security,
Buildings,
moving. I mean,
power,
I'm thinking.
water, everything.
I mean, I own a business, so I can slightly imagine the costs of this
Well, you have all
and
these,
scale to
think
make
of-
the costs.
when you replace the lights in here.
Yeah.
So in a grow facility, the lights you have so many lights
Yep.
and all the equipment, and it burns out. You're constantly replenishing lights, replenishing soil, and the HVAC, the HVAC
Yeah.
is immense. The power utilization is huge.
Yeah.
So it's a massively capital intensive business.
Yeah.
The margins are great, but you got to get into it.
Yeah.
So the problem we have with it is the way that they've currently set up the licenses. They basically are going to issue licenses to businesses that are owned 51%. So somebody has to own 51% of the business. And the individual has to be somebody who has a marijuana arrest in their background or had a family who's been arrested.
They have to.
It has to have been arrested. And they have to be 400% below the federal poverty line.
400%?
Yes, so it's got to be a person who has no money, who's basically destitute, has no money, and basically has a marijuana arrest, and they're going to give this person a license to compete in the marijuana business.
Yeah.
And from our point of view, it's like insane.
How is that possible?
So what's happening is kind of the big marijuana business.
Who's going to give that money? Someone that might be a little bit shady too. Like,
Well,
so if you're 51%, but the other 48%, 49% is going to be probably money from.
Well, no. So what's end up happening is the big dispensaries that you see,
Yeah.
and probably people are noticing this if they actually frequent dispensaries or have text messages. The big dispensaries are going out and saying, "Hey, do you meet the criteria to be a social equity applicant?"
So they'll own.
So they'll bring him as at a 51%, get the license. It'll be a lottery, and that individual's not going to have money to bring into the business, and so they'll kind of get shuttled out of the business at some point.
These guys are
They'll
crafty.
You don't have to keep that person in. That person can do a voluntary sale of their interest in the business. And so what'll end up happening is those people are just, they'll apply for the license, and then at some point they just get bought out for, $250,000 or $500,000. And obviously to that person, that's great.
It's great, yeah.
I mean, you're 400% below the poverty line. You get a $500,000 check. It's probably
Yeah.
it's a lottery ticket.
Actually, I would probably do that.
Yeah.
If I didn't think I could handle running something so big and so complex, I'm like, I'll take the check. And
Correct. Well,
do something different.
The problem is if you're 51% owner in a business that's going to have to capitalize the grow and the dispensary and all the other stuff, you don't have the money.
Yeah.
So you're going to get diluted out of the business, and at some point they'll just create a business transactional structure that'll say, at some point you're going to have to kick in, $1 million or get bought out for $500,000.
Yeah.
And, you're going to tell somebody who's 400%, but, you're going to tell them, if we get the license, and we start capitalizing the business, you're going to have to come up with, $1 million, $2 million, maybe $3 million to do this. Or if you can't, I'm just going to pay you $500,000 for your share. How does that sound? And that's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer, yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
Again, like
for that
I
person
would
to
do that.
Yeah, correct. I might too.
Yeah.
I mean, or what's going to happen is there's just going to be all these fights about who has control of the business. And so that's going to be a whole bunch of litigation. Lawyers like me are going to make a metric shit ton of money off of that.
Yeah.
I've done a ton of board control issues in the medical space.
Yeah.
But so I represent this outfit called Black Seed, and we're saying that's not the way to do the licenses. What we should be doing is you should be looking at what the business intends to do. Is it going to go into the black community? Is it going to have jobs programs? Teach people how to do cultivation. Teach people how to do the dispensary stuff.
Yeah.
Teach them the actual business. Be a jobs program.
Yeah.
Take the money and actually push it into the community so that we can actually have people that learn to be in this business long term. Not one single guy who gets a lottery ticket from
Yeah.
some zip code.
Yeah,
the
help
other
the
way
whole
they do it
community.
is you have to come from a certain zip code. So we'd rather actually help community and have people long term be in the business and actually bring people so that there will actually be people that are in the business that will actually profit on a community-wide level.
So are you trying to write legislation for this then?
So they came out with so the legislation came out, the social equity licenses in the initiative that passed adult use. It's like a one sentence. We will issue 26 social equity licenses. And they basically deferred it to Arizona Department of Health Services on how to write the regulations. And the Arizona Department of Health Services came out with the regulations. And once we've actually looked at the regulations, we've said, no, those don't work at all, because they're sort of individual based for the reasons we talked about. 400% below poverty line, you have to live in a certain zip code, you have to have been busted by weed, or somebody in your family got busted for weed, and so you've suffered as a result of prohibition. And we're suing in Maricopa County Superior Court to say, no, that's not the way the regulation should have been written. They should be much more targeted to how the business is focused on the community. And so the regulations are junk. We need new regulations. And so basically we've gone to court to ask a judge to force Arizona DHS to open up the regulations again so they can be rewritten. That's basically what the case is about.
And will you help write them? Like give them advice on like how this is how we think it should be written, or like is it a bunch of lawyers that are thinking about writing it, or
there are a bunch of people who are fighting about it. The lawyers are actually hoping that we get to help write the regulations.
Yeah.
But it sort of depends what the judge wants to do. So
yeah.
I mean, we sort of said the regulations are junk, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would like to write those regulations.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, that sounds like could be a great thing for communities,
Correct.
Job creation. Like, I mean, that's beneficial to these communities that could help. I mean, it's a lot of money. These things
Correct. I mean, you
produce a ton of money. I mean,
you get a cultivation facility. It can be a decent sized cultivation facility. It's a $20 million a year business. And so how many people does that hire?
Yeah.
You have, master growers, make $500,000 to $750,000 a year if you're a really good master grower.
Yeah.
So we could teach people to be that.
Yeah.
And certainly, in the future, if you think about it, if it becomes federally legal
Mm-hmm.
and can actually go, coast to coast and be transported across state lines, I mean, somebody who's a master grower and really understands the cultivation can go to any state in the union.
Yeah.
And get a job.
I was trying to get I don't know if I should say it. It doesn't matter. It's legal. Chaz,
Yeah.
His father cultivates in Montana.
Okay.
And legally through medical
Right.
marijuana. And so Chaz has been raised doing it for like 5 years, 6
Right.
years.
Yeah.
He's helped him run the thing.
Right.
And he's really good at it. He was trying to tell me all about it. I'm like, dude, you're speaking like another language to me. I have no idea. Like, he's so like a weed scientist is what I thought about, and
Completely.
I was like, when you come here, there's so many operations. You should just try to get in a grow operation, try to help grow. I mean, you have knowledge. It's not like you're some guy off the street. Like, you've done this for 5 years, and you could prove that you've done it because
Yeah, I don't know.
they have access to
I
it.
actually didn't know Chaz did that. I have
Yeah.
a ton of job opportunities. If
I
you
mean,
would reach out.
we could talk to him, we could talk to him or whatever, but that was just my thought process, because he saved money to come here, then he got injured, and all his money went to medical bills, and then he had to start working. He works with Adrian, and it's just hard work for him, it's physical work, and then he tries to do jiu-jitsu, and it's like, and I've done that before, it's hard, like taxing on you to do that all day long, physical, and then no more physical. I'm like, maybe you could just get a job doing that, and probably you can get good hours too, because it's a 24-hour business.
Right.
I'm sure it's running 24 hours, so you could do shifts. You could probably, and if you are good, I mean, they'll give you a decent shift, I'm gonna guess, because you're not they don't have to teach you as much. I mean, obviously they'd have to teach how their facility works, but you understand.
I don't even know why he's not doing it.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe he wanted to get away from it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or he didn't know who to talk to. I don't know. But I was like, this would be good for you. I think you could probably make good money doing this.
Money.
Yeah, great money especially for your age, and because of the knowledge you already have.
Right.
Anyway, maybe we could talk to him about that later. But I think that's a cool thing you're doing. Actually, I never knew that. I knew that you did that kind of law, and you did a lot of aviation law too.
Correct.
But it was a funny thing, because I've had many lawyers train with me over the years, and I never understood how many specialties of law there are.
Right.
And so many different. I've had many different types of lawyers. And, when you see billboards or commercials, it's always like accident lawyer. And then you think of criminal lawyers. But there's all the Like those two things right there alone, like that's very specialized.
Yeah, people, it's always an oddity when I'm talking to lawyers. They're like, so what do you do? And I'm like, I'm an aviation and cannabis lawyer. And they're like, how the hell did
how do those go together?
And it's actually, I mean, the story is pretty simple. My aviation law is a business. I'm a business aviation lawyer, which means I don't do airlines. I just do like Learjets and rich people who own airplanes and charter and all that stuff.
You've done airports though, right?
And I also do airport law.
Yeah.
But primarily I do rich people who and it's not only, it's companies that do it too, but hell, if you can actually fly, not airline, I mean, it's great. You pull up in your car, a guy opens it, they go park it for you, you go walk up the stairs, there's a cocktail waiting for you, you get into this, there's no TSA, the airplane leaves, you go do your meeting. At the end of your meeting, as you walk out, you pick up your phone and you call the pilot and you say, or you text the pilot and you say, we're on the way, and they'll say, we'll be ready for you. You pull in, you get in the airplane, they fly away. It's if you can travel that way, I would do it all the time.
Yeah,
the only problem is it costs a boatload of money.
Yeah, when I did landscaping, we had a client who was a billionaire, and he had a healthcare brokerage company,
right?
And he owned like a whole town somewhere in Illinois or something like that. And he had a jet, and he had two pilots that did shifts, 12-hour shifts, so that anytime he just called, you're ready to go. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go to the Kentucky Derby. I'll see you later. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
No,
and
it's
I was
the
like, this
only
is
way
like,
to do things. Oh my God.
He drove his Bentley to Scottsdale Airport, and then got on his private jet and went wherever he felt like it. And it was like a 10-minute drive from where he was at to the airport.
And anywhere you want to go in the country.
Yeah, and he's gone.
And it's so... most people get upset standing in a TSA line, how rude it is and all that other stuff. I actually stand in TSA lines and go, when 2008 happened and the bottom fell out of the economy, I had a bunch of really wealthy clients who were like, oh, I'm not sure we can afford our airplane. Maybe we should park it. And they would go and fly commercially like through the airlines like 2 or 3 times, and they came back. They're like, this is hideous.
It's not worth it.
Horrendous. So I've stood in TSA lines and I kind of smile because it's good for my business. The worse TSA makes it, the more people who are like on the margins actually will fly charter and what have you. And actually COVID's been really good for the aviation business, because if you have executives, they don't want them flying on airlines potentially catching COVID, so they've been using a lot of charter stuff. So I had a client who had like 2 or 3 or 4 airplanes, I forget at the time, and he told me, I want to get into the cannabis business. And this is back in like 2011, 2012. And he says to me, I want to get into cannabis business. And I said, and I want you to advise me. I trust you. We've worked together. And you've helped me with all my aviation stuff and a lot of my other business stuff. And I said, Jim, geez, what I know about cannabis, I grew up in a Southern California beach town. That's what I know about cannabis. And he said, go learn and I'll pay you to learn. And so I was like one of the first big firm lawyers to actually get into the cannabis business. And he was only in it for a little bit and he got out. But
it gave you the education.
The education, and all of a sudden one thing started to lead to another.
Yeah.
And so the next thing you knew, I was representing a whole bunch of, because there weren't a lot of big firm lawyers that actually did this area.
Yeah.
And so
a niche.
It was a niche. And so all of a sudden
now you have experience over anyone new that comes in. Cause I've been doing this for a while, since the beginning.
And so, we just did a deal on a Canadian stock exchange with a $3.5 billion deal in combining. It was kind of 2-3 cannabis companies into a single entity to go on a public stock exchange in Canada. It was $3.5 billion. It's amazing amount of money in this business, and it's just people are trying to get into it any way they can.
Yeah.
So, and it's actually really fun. It's very similar to aviation, highly regulated, very complex, very capital intensive. So the businesses are actually very much alike.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know much about growing.
Yeah.
I understand the basics.
But that's not
That's not what I do.
You're just making sure everything's kosher and legal, and then as far as, like you said, businesses are concerned, like contracts are correct, and
it's but even the legal stuff, it's and this is what you're talking about. People think legal. So if you look at the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act, one of the things it's always been very amusing to me is it never really addresses where the stuff comes from initially.
Okay.
Like, because it was all illegal and it's still federally illegal.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden you make it legal. So where do the initial plants come from? You know, they don't just spring from the earth. You don't just go, here's marijuana plants. And so it's like a don't ask, don't tell policy. It's really pretty
Well, Chaz was explaining that to me. We were driving somewhere. It was like a long drive, and he was just like,
genetics.
Telling me clones and like, oh, you get these certain clones. And then I was like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, we get the seeds from Amsterdam, and then those are like, they've been doing it for so long. They have the best genetics. And then it's like, it was like so complex where he got, like you said, where do you get it from?
Right.
You don't get like a baggie and then you get the seeds. No, that's not what this stuff is. This is genetically made.
And genetics is big business.
Yes.
It's a huge business, and you buy your seeds.
Yep.
And say that your genetics come from California into Arizona.
Yeah.
Well, is that legal?
Yeah, because it's transporting
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like a don't ask, don't tell policy.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody,
And technically, you could track all of that. Because the plants have genetics. I mean, if you did scientifically, you could figure out.
Correct.
Where.
Well, people intellectually protect
property.
Yeah, your IP property, the genetics.
100%.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And the IP, so for instance,
there's guys that just do seeds.
But correct.
Yeah.
But some of it, remember one of the first times I was walking through a dispensary doing a legal audit of the thing, and I looked at the names of the stuff, like the one I can think of is Girl Scout cookies. And I'm thinking, you guys call this stuff Girl Scout cookies? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, do the Girl Scouts know you call it Girl Scout cookies? No, we're expecting a challenge. And and one day in my practice, I received a letter from Girl Scouts of America saying, if you continue to call your weed Girl Scout cookies, we're going to sue you.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. It's their name.
Correct. And so,
I would be the same thing. If someone called it Strong Heart, I'm like, no, you can't call it Strong Heart Jiu-Jitsu. I'm Strong Heart Jiu-Jitsu.
Correct. Well, there is some sense that, whether there's consumer confusion. Like, one of the things is a consumer going to confuse a Girl Scout cookie for a Girl Scout weed? Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
Unless they were selling some sort of edible cookie called from the strain of Girl Scout cookies. And then maybe it's like, obviously there's the packaging. Everyone knows what the Girl Scout, the boxes. I mean, they've been the same way forever.
Correct.
But I don't know.
You have to actually be, if you think about it from a medical point of view, you have to have a card, you have to go to a dispensary.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to confuse little Girl Scouts in front of, AJ's or wherever from going into a dispensary and buying Girl Scout cookies. Yeah. But on the other hand, do you really want to try that in front of a jury when a jury's like, yeah, we're not feeling a whole lot of sympathy for your weed called Girl Scout cookies when you're obviously making fun of the Girl Scouts. And so, the whole thing was, so we went ahead and, changed the name. Just, it's easy to change the name.
Yeah.
So, and then, usually what you'll just do is you'll just go to you'll actually tell your patients and say, hey, we got to change the name of this because the Girl Scouts are pissed.
Yeah.
And, what should we call Girl Scout cookies going forward? So that sort of ends up being the thing. But it's constantly in flux and change. So, they got Gorilla Glue is another one. And the Gorilla Glue people got kind of ticked off because it's called Gorilla Glue. Captain Crunch, it's just all this. And these names come from the prior
when it wasn't legal and you didn't care anyway because it's not legal in the first place.
Exactly.
So what do I care?
Correct. And you can't, a lot of these trademarks and trade names and trade dress are federally protected. And so you're working through whether you can actually federally protect an illegal substance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like they're ever going to change that federally?
Yes. And
what is stopping them at this point?
The fact that Congress won't do anything.
Wow.
And there is a industrial complex that protects. There's a police industrial complex that protects enforcement because they actually make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of police departments that do a lot of civil forfeiture and all kinds of things that want weed to remain federally illegal. Congress doesn't do bupkis, so they don't do shit. It's actually the way I'm actually coming to the belief that the way it's actually going to end up becoming federally legal, and before I say that, it's actually not as easy as people think.
Yeah.
So right now it's on the federal guidelines, it's a Schedule 1 illegal substance, meaning that it has no redeeming medical qualities.
Yeah.
Like, morphine heroin is actually not a Schedule 1 substance. It's actually a Schedule 2.
Yep.
That way it can be prescribed. Whereas federally, and that also means no testing is done on it, no medical testing. So, for instance, some weird anomalies that they have on it is that there are people that are trying to figure out what the new strains of cannabis are doing, because the potency's gotten so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you really get some potent stuff, and people are dabbing and doing some really, and people are doing it on a daily basis, and so it's, the feeling has always been, weed doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, but how long term what is the problem?
Especially with these potencies, and there's some sense that it's causing psychosis.
Yeah.
And really screwing people up.
Some people with what is it called?
Is it causing mental illness?
Yeah, but they say certain people that have certain mental illness, when they use marijuana, it's a problem. Yeah.
Well, but nobody really knows, because it hasn't been studied. No, if I am a medical researcher who wants to research cannabis, I have this huge freaking problem, because because of all the stuff, I can't obtain the substance.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, they generally drive around like a van, and so they have to follow a bunch of people who go in a house and smoke weed that they obtain from a dispensary. And so I don't know how good the weed is. If I actually want to go and get where I can study the product, I actually have to go to the DEA, obtain a waiver, the Drug Enforcement Agency, obtain a waiver, and then I can only obtain my product from, I think it's the University of Mississippi.
Yeah.
Where they have one.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I've actually saw a show on it.
And there's 6 plants, and they're from the 60s.
They're old.
They're old. They don't have the potency. So it's very difficult to do that. So some people say, well, why don't we go ahead and reschedule it to a Schedule 2, make Schedule 3? Well, the problem that you have, if you do that, then it immediately falls under the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, and so they will actually it'll be like a prescription,
more regulation,
and it'll actually be federally regulated, and will instantaneously put the state folks out of business. Will also kill adult use or recreational, because who can recreationally use a Schedule 2 substance?
Yeah,
you can't.
You need prescriptions.
So the question is how do you fit that into
what
the
does
federal
alcohol
system?
fall under then?
ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms.
Maybe it needs to be ATFM.
Yeah, maybe.
ATFM.
Correct, but
I don't know. I'm just like, how would you do that? Yeah, I don't know.
Correct, but there
ATF
are
is a weird
medical,
thing.
But
They're like, well, we want to regulate firearms, tobacco, and alcohol. I'm like, what?
But so if it falls under then, but it's not like tobacco, which has really no medical usage whatsoever. Alcohol does, but not really. It's not really used in the medical regime.
Yeah.
But clearly, marijuana is used in the medical regime. There are, Arizona, any other state has a ton of pediatric patients who use it.
Yeah.
Like I have one client
Really?
whose daughter
for epilepsy? I heard epilepsy,
really solved her epilepsy problem. Nothing else worked.
Yeah, I heard that.
And that's why I kind of got into the business, is because it really, his daughter used to have 30 or 40 seizures a day.
Oh, that's terrible.
She was not functional at all.
Yeah,
It was
for
a
sure.
young 3 or 4 year old kid.
Oh, that's terrible.
And then, they got her started on a sort of a THC CBD tincture, and she don't have seizures anymore. And if they take it away, it immediately comes back. So there are utilizations for that as a pain medication. So one of the things that I've worked with considerably, and one of the industries that really wants to get into cannabis and is struggling with what to do, is workers' compensation. So if you're a worker compensation carrier, one of your biggest areas of loss is somebody gets hurt on the job, and they say they screw their back up, and they go in and they have some sort of back surgery, so they put them on some sort of codeine or hydrocodone or what have you. People get hooked on it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then all of a sudden they're long-term disabled as a result of their codeine addiction.
Yeah.
That has massive health repercussions if you get hooked on that stuff.
Yeah.
causes all kinds of other side effects. People can't go back to work, and all of a sudden they're long-term workers' comp on that.
Well, I mean, so much of these homeless people are that.
Correct.
They weren't that before. They got hooked on. They got an injury.
Right.
They're giving pills, and then the pills got taken away, and then they're just on heroin, and now they're just on the streets.
Correct.
Like, it just went. They were like law-abiding citizens that just got hurt, and then the doctor's like, "Yeah, this is fine," and then they got addicted, and then it's like an epidemic, honestly.
And then all of a sudden it goes completely the other way. Now you end up in a situation where, geez, if you actually really get hurt and you go to a doctor, they're like, "Oh, take a Tylenol." I'm like, I wouldn't have paid the $250 copay.
Yeah, for sure.
For you to tell me go home and take some Tylenol. I mean, I could have done that on my own. Why did I come here? I came here because you're the gateway to make sure that I can.
That's the problem with pendulums, man. Like things just swing so far one way and then swing so far the other.
But marijuana usage in that has shown to be very good for pain. It doesn't have near the negative side effects that people have from using opiates.
Yeah.
So the workers' comp carriers are like, well, geez, if we could actually prescribe marijuana for this, it might actually be very beneficial to us.
Yeah.
And that's downstream. Because, if you're an employer, you got your workers' comp payments that you have to make, costs you a ton of money.
Yeah.
If you can lower those premiums, they're interested in doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's an amazing downstream thing. So how I think it's actually going to get legalized. The United States Supreme Court has started to make noises of the fact that because states have legalized it and the feds aren't prosecuting it anymore, especially in states that it's legal, that you have this criminal law in the books that the feds are not prosecuting.
Yeah.
And so at some point there's going to be a challenge in the United States Supreme Court, and they're going to invalidate the law saying you can't have this criminal statute on the books that you don't prosecute. And that's, I think, maybe how it gets. And then Supreme Court will invalidate that. And then the feds will be like, great, we don't have to take a position. And that maybe that's how it goes away.
And then what is it, though? The FDA? Or is a product? Like, how is it?
They'll say the United States Supreme Court will kick it back to Congress. Congress will do nothing because it doesn't matter. And just let the states run the thing.
Oh, all right. That's good. That's fine with me.
I think that's how it, I don't see it getting.
I mean, it's regulated here.
Fixed.
The Arizona Health Department regulates it, so
correct.
Making sure that you're not poisoning people.
Yeah. It's lab tested now.
Yeah.
So
that's
and not the long-term health effects of the things people don't. I mean, smoking flower, I think, probably causes cancer.
Yeah.
Same as tobacco, but.
Carcinogens.
But the industry is...
But there's less chemicals than the tobacco. Like, tobacco has a lot of chemicals that they add to it.
I don't think people can smoke as much as people could smoke tobacco. Like, you can't smoke...
You can't smoke marijuana as much as tobacco.
But it's easy
I mean,
to say that.
I think
know
some
people
people
that are just like, oh, my God, how
all
much
day
can
long.
you smoke?
Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's... I take the position on all drugs that... I'm weird. Like, I think all drugs should be legal at 21, and I think all the money that they put in the DEA should be put into campaigns for anti-drugs and campaigns for rehabilitation. Because rehabilitation is a joke, and it costs $1 bajillion, and if you're poor, you're not going to be able to get into it. And I don't see... The problem is, like, nothing is... Because it's illegal hasn't changed anything. Like, there's only more drugs, not less drugs.
Correct.
And so I don't know what, I mean, what are we doing?
I would segment.
You could do drugs in jail.
I would segment between, I think marijuana, you could say marijuana is about the same societal harms maybe as alcohol.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less, and I'm a liberty guy and in favor of freedom.
Yeah.
But, making something like meth legal.
Oh, I know. I get it.
Yeah.
No, I understand. Meth is bad.
Oh, no.
Heroin is really bad. And now fentanyl is like super heroin. And then you have carfentanil, which is like super, super heroin.
Right.
I'm just saying there's still dudes behind this building doing heroin, and the cops don't do anything.
Right.
And they're not even really... doing anything anymore. But
Right.
even if you go to jail, you could get drugs in jail.
Right.
So it's like, I don't understand the point. Is what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And you're spending a lot of money that does nothing. So I'm saying if you're gonna use this money, I'd rather put that into like drug prevention programs, like all of it. Like how many billions of dollars does the DEA get?
But so correct. But now you think about it, that money doesn't really not do nothing, right? So that's part of the problem why making
it's
legalization.
jobs for sure. It's
Correct.
jobs.
There's
I
like
get
a
it.
ton of people who make a living off of that.
I understand, but it's not doing the benefit that's supposed to.
Correct.
You would have tons of jobs that would be into advertising, because basically it'd be like don't do drugs ads, and counseling. Like the people are gonna have to be counseling people. Like there'll be programs.
You don't have these cool tanks you can drive into houses.
Yeah, that's
and
insane though to me. Like this is like police state. You know, I honestly think we're in a police state right now. I don't want to get too far off the rails here, but like, yeah, I mean, I feel I have less rights than when I was a kid, and
that's true. Yeah.
and I just feel like even currently it's like even more. Like I was telling someone the other day, like, you know, I remember when the Patriot Act happened. And then I was talking to on Thanksgiving with my mother-in-law. And she was like, she does accounting.
Right.
She's like, you don't understand how much goes into accounting with a Patriot. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh yeah, if you're gonna do a SHA account, like I need all this information about you for the Patriot. I was like, really? Like it involves your health savings account.
Right.
It's just like the government's fingers and everything. And I'm not sure I feel that much safer. I guess we haven't had a terrorist attack. But I feel like there's other ways to do that, and then everything's being tracked, and it never went away. So anytime they take this power, like it never goes away.
Right.
And then when the insurance mandates happened, it was like I have shittier insurance and I pay more.
Right.
With less.
Right.
And I'm forced.
Yes.
And I'm like, what? I understood the idea, like, hey, let's get everyone insured. Well, let's make this affordable. I mean, why didn't you just make it affordable? Why would instead you make it a mandate? That doesn't make sense. And then now it's like the vaccine mandate. You know, I have a friend that trains with us, Joe, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to lose my job on the 15th if I don't get a vaccine. And he's like, I'm not anti-vaccine. I had some issues when I was in the military with vaccines. Like my body, whatever's in the vaccines, sometimes it's what that keeps them from going bad, because vaccines go bad when you're storing them.
Yeah.
It's not the actual vaccine; it's the stuff that keeps them.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, like you put salt in things to make
the preservatives.
Preservatives,
Yeah.
yes. So it's like he's like, I'm not. I think vaccines are good. I just think it's not good for me. Like this could be bad for me. I'm worried.
Right.
I don't want to take the vaccine, and I'm a healthy guy. I'd rather just not be forced to do this. He said that his health company, because he works in an insurance company, where they have government contracts, so they're forced.
Yeah.
And he's like, we might lose 33% of our company
Right.
in like 2 weeks, right before Christmas.
Well, you look
Before Christmas.
You look what happened with Southwest.
In Southwest, yeah.
Yeah.
And and everyone looks at me like I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, it's not like a big conspiracy. It's just like once people get power, they don't give it back up. And
Correct.
and you're losing these rights, and you guys are so freely giving them away. And I've been to other countries where like you don't have any of these, and you're just like taking it for granted that they'll just take it from you.
Right.
And I'm wondering like, what is the next thing? You know, like, and that's over the last 20 years. Those big three things happen in 20 years. And
Well,
I'm like,
I
what is the
think in
future
law,
here?
I think the thing in law that most people are not aware of on a daily basis is the power that prosecutors have. So they have this theory that you can actually, prosecutors have this joke that say they can indict a ham sandwich. So you put a ham sandwich on a table and figure out what crimes it's committed.
Yeah.
And there's so many laws in the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
You've committed something, law, that
Yeah.
you just didn't know.
Correct.
There's a law.
It's a famous book called 3 Felonies a Day, and the guy posits that every one of us commits 2 or 3 felonies a day that a prosecutor could get you on. And the bad part is, if a prosecutor decides they want to prosecute you, they can they can almost make stuff out of whole cloth because they really aren't accountable. They're absolutely immune from civil suit. You can't sue them. Really, only the state bar could disbar them, I suppose. And you're really relying on the judicial system to not to shut it down. But I mean, if you like Rittenhouse, I mean, how much do you think it costs to do Rittenhouse's trial?
I don't know, millions of dollars. I have
Probably $1 million is what it cost that to do that trial.
Yeah,
and he was lucky in that a bunch of people gave money, so that's how he was able
to support.
Correct, because he became like a celebrity.
Yeah.
And you can actually see now he's going on Tucker Carlson and all this other stuff, and he's doing that thing. But that was part of how he funded his criminal defense. He was lucky in that way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks aren't.
Yeah.
And so if you and I, Joe Average, suddenly becomes the target of a prosecutor, right? Who has $1 million to pay an attorney for fees? And and you don't want to be in a situation where you're standing in front of a jury and a jury's running through an indictment, guilty, not guilty. And even if you go to trial, I mean, only, of people who are charged with crimes, only a vanishingly percentage, like maybe 3 or 4% actually go to trial. The other 96% take plea deals.
Yeah.
And so, all of a sudden a prosecutor will prosecute you, run up a Christmas tree of charges. Mm-hmm. You'll look at it and they'll be like, listen, you can take this charge or this charge or this charge. You can go ahead and do 6 months in jail, or hell, I'll go ahead and prosecute you. You can look at 10 to 15 years, plus you'll be financially ruined. And in fact, you're going to end up with a public, if you're destitute, you'll get a public defender who's overworked and, just can't. They'll do the best job they can, but they are who they are. And so the judicial system, and this is one of my big soapboxes that I have even as a civil guy, that I don't do criminal defense, but the criminal defense system is a disaster area.
Yeah.
It is horrendously bad, and people just have no idea.
There's so many people in
until
jail.
They get sucked into the system.
People don't understand how many people are in prison.
Correct. Or how many
crazy.
People have, and then so you take a charge. Even if you don't, now you have a criminal thing in your history, and it kills your credit rating, being able to find a house, being able to find a job, and it just kills you.
And then it just perpetuates itself because now you got to do crime to get by.
Correct. And so it's insanity to me how we handle criminal stuff. It's insane. I don't understand how the system is intended to work. And it doesn't work like it's supposed to. So that's.
I had a student, and I tell this story all the time because it freaked me out so much. This guy, he wasn't here very long, and he just disappeared for like 3 or 4 months, and then he came back one day. Yeah. He's like, "Hey man, I'm so sorry. This crazy scenario happened. He was in an apartment complex. He was upstairs, second floor, bottom stairs. They were having a domestic dispute. Somebody's uncle was being belligerent and drunk and violent. And the mom went upstairs, brought the children upstairs and said, hey, we're calling the cops. Can you just watch the kids? Like, we're just trying to calm them down. The cops are coming. Just watch the kids. And because he's being violent. And right. I don't think the dad was there. I think it was just a mom or something. Yeah. And so there wasn't a guy. So she couldn't leave with the kids because the guy's going to follow or whatever. Yeah. And so she goes upstairs, get the kids. This cop comes in. And so how I all know this is because the body cam. And he gave me the body cam.
Right.
He had this little flash drive he gave me. I still have it to this day. And I watched it, and it is the most disturbing shit I've ever seen, ever. Like, it's so disturbing. Yeah. And they arrest the guy downstairs. The cop goes upstairs to retrieve the kids.
Right.
And he doesn't stand in front of the door when he knocks the door because I think he wants to be out of sight for a gunshot. Yeah. So he's knocking the door. He doesn't say that he's the police.
Right.
He says, open the door. And he's pounding on the door. And he's pounding, too.
Right.
So the guy inside, my student, doesn't know who's at the door. And he says, like, you have to protect my kids. So he answers the door with a gun.
Right.
The cop immediately grabs the gun, sticks the gun, and I don't blame the cop for this. None of that part I have any problem with because you don't know the scenario. He puts the gun, I'll fucking execute you. Put the gun down. He puts the gun down. He lays down on the ground. He's handcuffing him, and he's yelling, don't resist. and just starts punching him in the ribs. He's handcuffed with his arms behind his back.
Yeah.
There's no resisting.
Yeah.
There's no resisting.
Stop resisting.
He's just
Stop
punching
resisting.
him. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And he goes downstairs, arrests my student,
Right.
and starts talking to, so he was the only one there. There was only one officer.
Right.
So he starts telling the other officer what happened. And it is not what's in the video.
Right.
And then he goes downstairs and he talks to the woman. He's like, hey, would you like to prosecute and say that he's coercing her into saying that he took your kids.
Right.
She's like, no, I brought the kids up there. She's like, yeah, but he's a dangerous and he endangered the kids.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
You know, like he just got stuck in a bad situation. So they go in, they send him to jail. And this cop's talking mad shit about the guy. They go inside his house and like inspect his house and stuff, and then they lock it. And he's just talking shit about this guy, and like I'm like, okay. And he goes to jail. He can't afford bail, so he's in jail for 3 months.
Right.
3 months in county jail.
Yeah.
And then the prosecutor comes and goes, hey, here's the deal. We're gonna prosecute you for assaulting. What was it? Assaulting an officer in attempted murder or something like that to an officer.
Right.
We will drop the charges, but you have to
agree not to sue us.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is your options.
Yeah.
You'll probably go to prison for like almost life because
then a guy will come to me.
Yeah.
And he will say to me, how's my civil case? And I will go, maybe decent.
Yeah.
Maybe decent.
Yeah.
But you're going to be fighting the criminal thing off on the side.
I don't know how he got the video. He got it from them somehow.
Public records.
Public record. Okay, yeah.
But you're looking at the guy, and it's like this prosecutor is going to take a run.
Yeah.
If completely coercive.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine if I had the leverage on you to say.
It was just so disturbing, man.
Sue me.
I was thinking in my mind.
Put you into jail.
I was thinking in my mind like. This is such an easy scenario that anyone could just run into. Like, you don't know what to say. Someone comes to your house like, hey, please watch my kids. Like, they're historical. You're like, you think you're doing the right thing.
If you feel like, and I've seen a few of these, if you feel like the only way you can open a door is
with a gun
in your hand,
don't open the door. Yeah.
There's no, if I have to bring a gun and I have to open that door, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, I'm with you.
It's just a moment of not thinking clearly.
Oh, and you wouldn't believe in what I've seen.
That cop got fired later on for something way worse. Like he just beat someone up, and it was like in front of other officers, and he had like multiple complaints against him. That's my other problem is like they don't get rid of guys when you should be getting. I mean, obviously it's a hard job, and again, they can make mistakes too. But it's like they don't ever get disciplined for making horrible life-changing mistakes to somebody, and that was so.
And they don't. See
it bothered me
they
so
don't see
much.
People as people too.
No, and they see you as the bad guy. I had an uncle that just retired, and he was always like suspicious. And I was like, this. And people used to tell me like, you're good at talking to people. You should be an officer because half of this is just talking to people. And I was like, absolutely not. I didn't want to see people as every person I talk to is a bad guy.
Right.
Until you prove you're guilty until proven innocent as an officer.
Right.
And until you tell me otherwise.
Right.
And I was like, I don't want to live like that. Like
right.
I don't want to go through life thinking that way. And I think that's just what the job does at a certain point. When you're in it long enough. And because you get around enough bad people, it's not like they don't do good things and they don't see bad people and they put like it's not that, but it's like you start seeing everyone that way.
But so for me, I'm like nuanced on cops because if you know a bunch of police officers, the people that they have to deal with. Just watch Live PD.
Oh, for sure.
And all of a sudden, so then you start to see their point of view. They deal with a lot of scumbags who want to kill them instantaneously.
Yeah.
Suddenly
They have to defend themselves too.
Correct. So you end up with this vicious sort of cycle. But man, if we were sitting here right now and an FBI agent walked in, sat down next to me and began to ask me questions, I would say, I'm leaving. And give me your card, and I will have my lawyer call you. I would not I wouldn't talk to a cop, and I wouldn't talk to an FBI agent at all.
I remember reading about, what's her name? Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
She goes to prison.
Yeah, for lying to a cop.
For FBI.
Yeah.
And it was like they tricked her into lying. It wasn't even like she didn't know what she was lying.
It is a standard operating procedure that the FBI will come in, ask you a question to which they know the answer.
Yeah.
And they know what the truth is. This happened to Mike Flynn too. And they will talk to you. And if you don't give them what is the God's honest truth, and in some ways it can sort of depend on what the officer said you said, because if the conversation isn't recorded, then I didn't say that. Well,
so it's almost better to go there and have a recording with a lawyer it's all written. It's all.
I generally see no reason to talk to a cop.
Yeah.
And if you're being investigated,
yeah.
why are you? The only reason to maybe participate in your investigation is you have absolutely exculpatory information. So
what does that mean?
It means something that makes you completely innocent.
Yeah.
So like an example, I represent a lot of pilots who are prosecuted by the FAA for stuff. Exculpatory was, I had one guy who was busted. He was apparently flew through some airspace he shouldn't have, and they came to him and they said, you were flying this airplane, but he was actually in a commercial airliner on the other side of the world. So he had 250 witnesses in the back, including one guy. Flights. So I sent that stuff to the FAA because I said it wasn't him.
Yeah.
Here he is flying for an airliner on the other side of the world. So that couldn't possibly have hit.
Yeah.
So that's something that's exculpatory, something that shows there's no way. You probably end up sharing that, but you're going to do that through a lawyer. You're just not going to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, and the FBI, the feds have been particularly bad at this, but cops too. There is no percentage, I think, in talking to a police officer or any kind of person that's doing an investigation. I just wouldn't. You become a subject of their investigation. If you misstate something, if you forget something, if the cop just decides to lie, if he just doesn't perceive your conversation correctly, because that can happen as well. People just have perceptual issues sometimes. And then the next thing you know, you're sucked in by the machine, and all of a sudden they're saying, well, you lied to a federal, lied to an FBI agent that carries a term of 2 years in a federal penitentiary. We'll go ahead and but we'll be good with you, and we'll go ahead and do time served, and you'll have that on your record. Why subject yourself to that? To me, it's like, I'm not.
I remember my father, when I was a little kid, we lived in Sunny Slope, and he was out front of the house, and he's a landscaper, and he was hand watering our yard. And a cop car pulls up, and they said, hey, get in the car. And his brother was an officer, so he's like, whatever, I trust the police. And so he gets in the car, and they take him to some girl. She was raped. She's like, is this the guy? And he was like, what? And she was like, oh, no, that wasn't the guy. And they just came him back home and dropped him off.
Yeah, no chance.
My mom, none of us even knew that he even got in the car and left. That's before cell phones or nothing. You're just gone. And you would have, if she was like, she didn't remember it right, he fit the description. Like a guy with a mustache, white with blondish hair. Right. That was it. Like, that's a million dudes in the 80s with a mustache. Like,
so cops will say to me,
I'm like, so my dad was like, I'll never talk again. So get into a car. I'm like, no, not. Am I arrested? No. Okay, well, then I'm not getting in the car with you.
So cops will often say to me, and I know a lot, I do the self-defense and all that stuff, so I'm around a lot of police officers. I have a ton of respect for them. And I understand they do a tough job, but I've had conversations with cops that are like, well, I have to treat you that way because I don't know if you're a criminal, bad guy who's going to shoot me. And I said, I have to treat you this way because I don't know if you're going to put me in jail. And you can. Not only that, you can physically attack me. And I can do nothing about it.
You just got to take the beating.
Correct. Because, if I get into a physical altercation with a police officer, others will show up, they will beat me to death, and I may get shot or what have you.
For sure.
And every punch I throw carries a charge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, I mean, you are kind of at their mercy.
For sure.
Which always indicates to me, and, you know, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer, but I tell people, I mean, if a cop knocks on my door and says, I would like to speak to you, I'm not talking to him at all. I have no interest in talking to law enforcement because it's just all downside. What's the upside? And you know, I think police officers sort of need to think about this because they need the help of the community.
Yeah.
But when the community, like, I consider myself pretty educated about the whole system and all that other stuff. When all the studies I've done and all the things I've been involved in lead me to be, I'm not gonna. Why would I speak to a police officer?
Yeah.
It would just, there's no upside to me at all. Even, I mean, I guess if you're involved in something, but or you need a police officer's help, but still, even then, you know, Ian, when Ian was 2, or like 1.5,
son.
he had my son,
Yeah.
who's a student for a while.
Just because they don't know who you are.
Ian is my son.
Yep.
He had a seizure as a result of overheating. They call them febrile seizures, but we ended up calling 911. The cops showed up, the ambulance showed up, you know, and he was fine, and they went down to the hospital. But I actually, the 2 police officers who showed up in the house started walking around and opening drawers in the house and started looking through the house. And I kind of followed them because I saw what they were doing. And I walked in behind him, and I actually said, "Gentlemen, your invitation to enter my home is rescinded. Get out." And I actually tell them that. And the cop looked at me. He said, "What?" I said, "You need to leave now. You cannot be here. I opened the door. I let you in. Now I'm going to ask you to leave."
You could ask police officers to leave once they're
why not?
in?
Yes.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yes, they don't have a search warrant. They're a guest. Now, can they refuse? Yeah, I suppose. Can they search through your house? Yes. But I was pretty firm about it, and I think they understood that, you know, I understand the system, and I can be firm and say, leave. I mean, they could refuse, and if they, you know, if they'd refused, I would have said, call your supervisor, bring your supervisor here. I want to speak with your supervisor, and I want you to stand here and you
explain.
And I would explain. But, and why are they looking through my house?
Yeah.
They're investigating me. They want to see, and I've called them for help on my son who's just had a febrile seizure, which is a minor medical condition.
Yeah.
And they're looking through my house to see, can we bust him for something?
Yeah. Looking for stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's gross. Get the hell out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and that can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
And people just have no idea. What if he opened it and, you know, found a joint or something? Then next thing you know, you're leaving in handcuffs for asking for help.
For help, yeah. It's I used to live with an officer too. When I first moved out of my house, I rented a room from a guy, and I remember him telling me that, like, traffic stops are, what did he call them, like, an opportunity to, like, find stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you pull someone over for whatever, but then it's just like, what else can you get out of this?
Right. And they start asking you questions.
Yeah. And it's like,
So
and I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. And then I remember he ended up working downtown, and then he quit because he was like, didn't like what was happening downtown, because, like, they were, like, pulling people over for jaywalking just so they could and try to search people, and, like, for gang members and stuff.
Right.
Just you know, doing things that are a little bit
But
on
people
the
are
border.
amazingly compliant. Like
Yeah.
on a DUI, one of the funniest things, most people don't understand this. You do not have to do the field sobriety test.
Yeah.
You don't
I've
have to do
heard
the monkey dance.
if you had a concussion, you should not do it for sure, because your balance might be completely off. And if you look at it, it's like made to fail.
Right.
How many people can walk a straight line
No, it's
sober?
Yeah.
Or say the alphabet backwards, or, like, they're just trying to confuse you.
correct. And so you actually talk to DUI lawyers. If a DUI lawyer gets pulled and the guy says, "So I'd like to give you a field sobriety test," a DUI lawyer will say, "I'll pass."
Yeah.
Because you're just building his probable cause to
yeah.
drag you down and do the test.
Yeah.
So if you if you say no for the field sobriety test, the cop has a decision to make.
I did it before.
You,
So my wife was at some restaurant and they were having margaritas.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Hey, can you pick me up?" Because
Right.
we were drinking.
Right.
And I was like, "Yeah." And I was sober. So we were like we were doing the right thing.
Right.
I pulled him over. All right, I'll go pick him up. And it was her friends were in the back seat. So her and a friend.
Right.
And I was driving. And this cop pulls me over and says, "You did were driving
saw you
unsafe."
pulling
And I was
out of
like,
it.
"No, I wasn't." And he's like, "Well, I don't know. I smell something. I think I smell alcohol in your breath." And I was like, "No, you don't."
Right.
He's like, "Well, it could be your cologne, but I don't know. So you need to get out of the car." And I was like, "Okay." I get out of the car and he's like, "Will you do?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Well, then we got to check your breath." I'm like, "Guess what? It's going to be 0.
Right.
You're going to get 0 out of me." And I'm being super coherent, but I was really upset because I was like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm tired. It's late. I got to get up early in the morning.
Right.
It's like 11 o'clock at night. I got to get up at 5.
Yeah.
You're wasting my time. It's cold. I'm like, I don't want to stand here on the side of the road. And he didn't have the test, so he had to call someone to come over to do the breathalyzer. And it was like his supervisors, whatever. I didn't ask for supervisors. It's the guy that was available in Glendale. And then they do it. And the guy, I could tell the other guy was more experienced, and he was looked and he's like, "This guy's not impaired. What are you doing wasting time?" He was mad at the other officer.
Right.
Took the test, and he looks at the other officer like, "We were wasting my time. Like my time too, not like the guy on the side of the road,
Right.
but like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Like I have other stuff to do." And then, it was just like a whole waste of time. I was like, what are we doing here, man? Like I'm doing the right thing. You're literally trying to just find people that are slightly impaired or like not even impaired at all, but maybe they did have drinks.
Like 0.09.
Yeah. You're just trying to put people in jail for no reason. I'm not a danger. Clearly I wasn't driving weird or nothing.
And
you lied. Like you lied and said I drove.
The lawyer in me would have been looking at this guy, what's your probable cause? What's your probable cause to go ahead? Because the field sobriety test is a probable cause vehicle. They are trying to get probable cause to actually do the test on you because they have to have some level of cause to do a test on you. So I would have been looking at the supervisor going, he has no probable cause. He has none. He hasn't done a field sobriety test on me, and my refusal to participate in the field sobriety test is not probable cause.
Oh, oh, okay.
Yeah, my refusal to do the field sobriety test is not a reason for you to give me the test.
So much of it for me was like, I'm just upset that I'm doing the right thing, and you guys are trying to arrest me.
I know. Well,
And it's like, I'm the designated driver. Like I'm showing up to help people out so that they're not driving intoxicated.
I would have just,
and they did the right thing by calling me.
Yeah,
and I'm doing the right thing, and like you're trying to put me in jail.
And he probably talked to you the whole time when the guy was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't even talk to him. I would have said, I'm going to stand here.
I sat and leaned against the car.
Yeah, I would have sat there and not talked to him. And anytime he would have spoken with me, the only words out of my mouth would have been,
I was just so mad.
are you still detaining me?
Yeah.
Am I detained? That's the first question. Are you detaining me? And if he says yes, then it's going to be, okay, I'm not talking to you. And the only thing you will get out of me is, can I leave? And my expressions to you that I want to leave this encounter. I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. And I did it for sure.
Yeah. No, and absolutely. You want to go home and go to bed. So when can I'd like to leave. I'd like to leave now. I have nothing to say to you other than I would like to leave now. May I leave? Can I leave? I'd like to leave. I'd like to leave now, immediately. The first second you feel like you can't detain me anymore, I'd like to leave.
And it's like, for me, it's too, is I love my uncle and I respect the officers. It's a hard ass job.
Right.
And it's a necessary job. I don't believe like we could take away all the cops and everything's going to be fine. No, it won't be.
But dumbass there made every other comp's job
harder. Yeah.
And his supervisor was ticked.
He was upset, the other guy.
Because he wasted the supervisor's time.
Yeah.
Did they apologize to you? Nah.
No. I've never seen that.
They didn't try to do anything to make it right. They leave, and you're a citizen who's on the side of the cops, and now all of a sudden you're in a different position because you're like, screw these guys. if it had actually been a situation in which they had actually treated you with some dignity and respect and said, and even the supervisor pulled you to the side and said, look, this is a new guy, he screwed up.
That's what I felt like. He was like a rookie or just he's not experienced.
And I'm going to counsel him, and this won't happen again. I really apologize for wasting your time. So sorry. Why don't you be on your way? And I really, really apologize to you. If he actually did that, you probably would have walked out of that encounter and said, okay, shit happens.
Shit happens, yeah.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have.
I would have. I'm like, yeah, did I get it? Like,
yeah, it's okay. I don't want drunk people, and this guy's being a moron.
And this is the thing, too. You shouldn't be driving drunk. I don't have a problem with that. Like, if I was drunk, man, I'm good DUI. I'm going to go to jail. Like, I endangered people, for sure. Yeah. Like, it's not like I'm anti-law. I don't know. It bothered me. I've had so many not good encounters with the officers. Even when this place was broken into, and I had it on film, and the dude's boot print was there, and all this stuff. And the officer, I was like, what are we gonna do anything here? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm like, well, I have his boot print. I have a video. He's like, man, I have people that rob banks, and we see their face. I don't know who that guy is. I'm like, yeah, but if you do catch a guy, you still have the video at least. So, like, it's evidence that he did it. Like, if you somehow catch him. And he was like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, here's the detective. I called the detective. They never called me back. And I was like, okay, what is the point here? Like, what do we, why did it even call the cops? Why do we even call the cops? Just call the insurance company and they fix the window. But that was the bullshit, too, because the window costs more than the deductible or less than the deductible. The deductible was higher than the window. But not the window, the back door that they broke.
I mean, it's easier to arrest people who the system and the plea bargaining and all that stuff's really designed more for if you're a career criminal and you have a whole criminal history. It's easy to just take the plea bargain, you do the 6 months in jail, and off you go doing your criming again. Where it really screws people is like law-abiding people who have lots to lose. They can't really run. They can't really hide. I got a house. I got a wife. I got kids. I got a career. Yeah. All that stuff can go down the tubes. I can't really just disappear. I can't jump in my car and just disappear off to the next state and that. And so and for cops, if you want to bust someone or arrest someone, it's just easier to do a law-abiding person. Yeah. And so they really don't concentrate.
Well, I don't know. Hopefully, I don't see anything changing anytime soon, though. But we complain and then just nothing ever happens. But I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about? This is an awesome conversation. Thanks for coming in, man.
We'll have to come do it again.
Yeah, like I said, I told you too. I read that book on the long journey or my journey with Nelson Mandela about South Africa. So he talks about not just apartheid, but like the history of South Africa, like the Xhosa people, and how they weren't technically originally there anyway. They also migrated into in the Boers, and like I never knew all this history, and like so it would just be cool to talk to you about living there and stuff. And now Omnicore and all this nonsense, and they shut that country down. I'm like, they're gonna lose so much money for this. And now it just came out today. It's like already here. It's in like 24 other countries already. It's like, so why are we shutting this down? I don't even understand.
So my sister actually sent me a text and showed me Omicron, the symptoms.
It's
and
like
as
cold.
You know, I just got done having COVID, and so the symptoms actually match. And so it's
what you had, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I had it.
Well, I just had dinner with Peter, the doctor that trains here, and he was saying that like they're not doing the tests as much because they don't tell you what strain. Yeah. And he was like, pretty sure all of them were Delta for the last couple of months. Right. And he's like, but we were testing for the A and B one, now we're on D and now we're on O or whatever. Right. It's like, it's not even the same. And the strains are different. And he told me this in the beginning of all this, because I was asking so many questions in the beginning, that, viruses mutate. Many times they mutate less symptoms. Right. Higher spreadability, but less symptoms, because the longer if you live, it's in the viruses, if it wants to replicate itself, the longer you live, the more it can replicate itself. Right. So if you die right away, like Ebola, it doesn't spread because that person died so quickly he wasn't able to spread it everywhere.
Yes.
So many times
he's not that transmissible. Either.
Yeah, they start mutating so that they don't kill hosts. They might make you sick, but like you'll spread it more.
Right.
So this is like why colds. There's so many different type of colds. There's so many different type of flus.
Right.
Because they mutate so much.
Right.
But generally, he says they usually get less severe over time.
Yeah.
Generally, not always. Obviously, AIDS is still dangerous. There's plenty of viruses that are extremely dangerous. But Omnicore seems like so far that it's the more milder of all of them so far.
Yeah, and it was 2-3 days, 4 days of unpleasantness. And
yeah, I mean, we rolled last night. You said like, oh, my cardio, it's gonna take a little bit of time to come back.
Yeah, but other than that, it was.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't want to get off topic, but that was. I
All
just
right,
saw South Africa. I'm like, man,
I enjoyed it. I look forward to doing it again.
All right.
Fun.
Peace. That's it.
Out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me talk for just a second, help me feel that sense of rhythm. Find the meanings in our bearings and discover this position as a stage along the way. Another rung to the ladder, either stalling or you're climbing, and I'd rather be the latter. Instead of getting fatter, let the footsteps resume naturally.